This is John Kohler with DiscountJuicers.com. Today we have a very special treat for you. We're going to show you the all-new Lequip RPM blender. Now this RPM blender has been completely redesigned from the ground up to make it even better than it was before. The previous model, before they redesigned it, did have a few issues, but that has been completely solved once they have redesigned it. So let's basically go ahead and unbox it, show you what it comes with, and explain all the different parts of the blender. So we could go ahead and open this box up. This is a 7-cup capacity for wet and dry blending. Now remember, blenders are mainly for blending, not for food processing. That's what a food processor is for. So in the box you get a 7-cup carafe. Here it is right here. I believe that's about 48 ounces. And this is the BPA-free Eastman Triton. So many blenders now come with a BPA-free carafe, such as the Vitamix and the BlendTech. But, you know, most of the household blenders still on the market don't have the BPA-free. So I like that. BPA-free also has a top here as well. So one of the other things you get with the RPM blender is this guy right here. They call it a smoothie stick. I would call it a tamper. It's useful to help push things into the blender just like this to get things to, you know, basically get blended up if you have too much cavation. The other thing that's really nice, they give you the blade and bearing removal tool. Now basically you're not really going to even use this unless you need to send it in or repair that for service. This is optional. Many inexpensive department store blenders, you always unscrew the bottom to basically clean it and wash it. With the RPM blender, and like the Vitamix and the BlendTech, it's a sealed unit, so you're not supposed to necessarily take it apart unless you need to service it. But you do get that anyways. In addition, you'll get the instruction booklet and also the warranty card. Now I do want to say that the warranty on this machine is 5 years on the base and 1 year on everything else. So we'll put that aside. And finally we're going to take out of the box here the main unit. This is the main body of the machine. This has a really high power motor. Actually it's 1100 watts maximum. It also has a little RPM gauge or like tachometer. So like for the car buffs out there, they have an RPM gauge in their car. It tells them how many RPMs or how fast the car's running. This is an RPM gauge to let you know how fast the machine's running, whether it's running at slow or full speed. You have an on and off switch, real simple, real easy, and a dial control. Much like your old-fashioned TV dial. You know, you could turn up the volume all the way, you could turn it down. So this one basically is a variable infinite speed that you just control by turning it. The other thing you have on the RPM blender is these rubber pads which help to sound dampen, and they have the metal on metal contact. So it's metal on one end, metal on the other end. So this is much better than the plastic on plastic or plastic on metal that some less expensive blenders have. Anyways, let's go ahead and move the box out of the way and let's set this up and get blending. So now that we have the blender all set up, the first task we're going to do is a task that's commonly done in the blenders that I like to do a lot, is to process these guys right here. And what these guys are right here, these guys are called flax seeds. So flax seeds are very high in omega-3 fatty acids. And most people, they don't eat enough omega-3 fatty acids, which is an essential fatty acid. Most people get way too many omega-6 fatty acids. So I'd encourage people to eat omega-3 fatty acids such as the flax seeds. The problem is these flax seeds are very hard. If you just try to eat the flax seeds whole, you're going to chew some up. Some of them will get digested, but most of them are just going to come out the other side whole, if you know what I mean. So what we need to do is we need to put these into the blender and basically grind up these flax seeds into a powder, and that's how powerful the Lequip RPM blender is. This basically has an adjustable speed control, and you can control the speed from 500 RPMs to 20,000 RPMs, and that's going really fast. It really takes the high speed and a nice sharp cutting blade to cut up and literally fractionate these flax seeds into a flax powder or a flax meal. The other thing I want to mention about the blender is that this is a German designed blade. So this design on the blade and the shape and how it works is German engineered. So hopefully to you that means high quality. I know it does to me. And the thing about the blade, I don't know if you could see that, when you turn the blade, there's basically the two bottom blades sweep the bottom of the carafe. So it's always going to let things basically get blended up. Some blenders, have you ever put stuff in there, then it just spins and nothing happens? Well, Not on the Lequip RPM. This is German engineered design blade. Going to work really good. And it actually is a nice sharp blade too, because a cutting action is very important. Anyways, we'll go ahead and put that back on there. We're going to just go ahead and dump these flax seeds in. We've got about a half cup there. Put the top on, and we're just going to cram this thing up to full blast. So turn it on, and we're just ramp this thing up. As you can see, the blender is spinning very fast, and it's literally cutting up all the flax seeds, turning them into a flax powder. Now when the blender does that, it makes it a lot easier for us to digest and get the nutrition out of those flax seeds. I probably didn't even need to run it that long, but you can see right here, we had flax seeds, and now we have flax meal or flax powder made in the Lequip RPM blender. This would be excellent to sprinkle over salad, sprinkle on top of breakfast cereals, on top of fruit, or whatever recipe you want to make. Actually, one of my favorite recipes to use with a flax meal is to combine the flax meal with some honey and some carob powder. Some raw carob powder. So those three ingredients mixed together makes an amazing, delicious raw food treat that's high in essential fatty acids. Anyways, maybe I'll do that tonight later for dessert. So now that we've ground the flax seed into meal and it did an amazing job on that, the next task we're going to do is a little bit harder for most blenders actually. We're going to take some ice. So we have some basically some cubed ice. We're going to pour that into the blender, and the Lequip RPM blender is going to turn this ice into snow. Now, do you believe me? Well, we're going to find out here in 1 second. We're going to put the blender craft on the base. Once again, put the top on. You always want to make sure the top is firmly seated so things don't splatter out at you. We're going to go ahead and pulse the blender. Now, it's very important, if you run a blender continuously and if you get cavation, it's not going to work. But if you just sit here and pulse it, the way this carafe is designed is basically folding stuff over, so it's going to get a nice complete blend. Alright, there we go. So that's pretty much it. This literally turned those cubed ice into snow. And look at that. And if you wanted to, you could take this up and have a snowball fight. So the last thing we're going to do in the RPM blender is what I recommend people should do every day to get the highest possible nutrition into their bodies. It's called make a green smoothie. Now, what is a green smoothie? Well, a green smoothie generally has some greens, and in this case we're going to use some delicious collard greens. We got a whole bunch here. This is literally 1 pound of collard greens. So how many days in a week do you eat literally 1 pound of collard greens in literally one sitting or one meal? And that's what we're going to do today. We're going to reduce 1 pound of collard greens into what's called a green smoothie. So besides the greens in a green smoothie, there's the other components, and the other component is simply this. It's a fruit, and in this case we're using orange juice. You could use some water and some bananas, some coconut water and some bananas, or other fruits, but I like to use the orange juice. So we got about 2 cups of orange juice, fresh squeezed. We're going to go ahead and pour that into the blender. Once again, the blenders are for blending and not necessarily for processing dry things. If you want to process dry things, you want to maybe go for a food processor, but processing wet things, the blender is definitely going to work best for you. I do have a really excellent video on YouTube that describes the differences between blending and food processing if you really want to know. So next, what we're going to do is we're going to take some of these greens, and we can't just literally shove all these greens in there. You're going to say, hey John, how is all that going to fit? I mean, that thing's bigger than the carafe. But what we're going to do is we're going to take a knife, and we're just going to cut up some of these greens into smaller pieces so it more easily fits into the blender carafe. So once again, it takes a really powerful blender to basically literally cream up these leafy greens into what's called a green smoothie so that you don't get the texture. Now, a really inefficient and non-powerful blender will leave chunks. It'll leave literally chunks of leaves in there, but a good blender will basically grind it up to a real smoothie-like consistency. So what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and take some greens there, shove that in. We're going to take some more greens and shove that in. We're going to take some more greens, shove that in. We're probably about half of the greens are cut up and now put into the blender carafe. And let's go ahead and cut up some more. Now, leafy greens are the most nutritionally dense foods on the planet. What does that mean, nutritionally dense? Well, most foods you would buy at, McDonald's or processed foods, those are calorically dense. What does that mean? Calorically dense means it has a lot of calories, but not a lot of nutrition. So leafy greens such as kale is probably the most nutrient-dense food on the planet, meaning it has a lot of nutrients, including vitamins, minerals, phytochemicals, antioxidants, all kinds of different nutrients that our body needs so that we can be optimally healthy. And that's why I like eating my greens a lot for salads and blended green smoothies like this, and even juicing them. And if you're wondering the differences between blending and juicing, I have another excellent video entitled Blending versus Juicing, and you could actually learn the differences. So we got pretty much most of this cut up. We got some stems here we're not going to put in the machine. The machine could probably grind those up, but it'll leave a little bit more chunky consistency. So let's go ahead and continue to stuff these greens into the machine. Now once again, this is 1 pound of greens getting stuffed into the RPM blender. Think this is going to bog it down and it won't be able to handle it? Well, we'll soon see. Alright, that's almost the last handful of greens going in the blender. That thing is pretty packed up, man. Got that packed in there pretty good. Okay, last handful right there. Let's go ahead and put the top on. Now we're going to take off the little pour cap. This could go in either way. So say you want to pour liquids in there, you could pour the liquids in there and it'll just drop it in a little bit at a time. Or you could put it in the reverse way like I did and just use it as a handle for your top. In this case, we're going to take it out because we may need to use that pusher to push the food into the blender to get it to blend up properly. Alright, so I got 2 cups of OJ fresh squeezed and 1 whole pound of the collard greens. So let's next go ahead and turn this machine on. See how it's doing. Alright, so we're going to use the pusher to push the greens down into the blades. Slowly but surely, the Lequip RPM blender is blending up all these greens. Now, you don't want to try this in a normal household blender. It's just definitely not going to work. Look at that. Now I got free blending now. It's completely blending without the stick. It's turning it, it's grinding up all those leaves into basically leaf fragments into a nice smoothie consistency. Now, the importance of this is that we can't digest whole leaf, but when the machine, such as a juicer or a blender, breaks it up, we can get much better digestion and assimilation of all those vitamins, minerals, phytochemicals, antioxidants in those green foods. And there it is, blended up, 1 pound of greens and 2 cups of orange juice. Now, in general, the more liquids you put in, the easier it's going to blend. Obviously, if I put in 1 cup of orange juice, it would have a much harder time, but it's slowly fragmenting up those greens and turning it into a liquid. And this is a pretty liquid consistency. I don't know if you could see that there. Let me go ahead and try that. Really good. There's almost like still a consistency to it. Maybe if you're new into doing this, you might want to only put 8 ounces of greens. But I really wanted to put this blender to the torture test to see how it would do. Next, besides making a green smoothie, you could take it up and bump it up a notch. So because it is dinner time right now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn this green smoothie into what I call a blended salad. So how do you do that? Well, a blended salad is basically putting everything you would normally eat in a salad into the blender and blending it up. So actually what I might do is I might use collard greens as my salad, and then I'll have a dressing made with orange juice and macadamia nuts in the blender that'll basically cream up the macadamia nuts with the orange juice and make like an orange cream dressing. It's so delicious. And so I guess all we need to do really is add the macadamia nuts. So let's do that next. Pour macadamia nuts in there, and now we're just going to blend those up and see how that works. Alright, so that worked really well. Besides the macadamia nuts, what I'd also like to put in salads, or maybe some tomatoes, or we got a pepper in this case. We're going to go ahead and cut this pepper up. And we're going to remove the white pith and the seeds of the pepper. Alright, so here we go. We got the whole pepper. We're just going to dunk this pepper in there. Now, you may not think that 48 ounces is a big capacity, but man, this is actually a fairly large capacity. Once again, we got 1 pepper, macadamia nuts, 2 cups of orange juice, 1 pound of collard greens. Go ahead and put that in. And when I turn it on, I like to turn it on, start it at low, and then ramp it up slowly to go into high, especially when you're blending something up like the peppers. Literally just sucks those peppers up and liquefies the peppers in the Lequip RPM blender. This is running at high speed now to fractionate and micronize all the ingredients we put in the blender. Alright, so I think that'll do it. Let's check this. I mean, this is my dinner tonight. Hopefully it's really good. That's really nice. So with the blender, it preserves and keeps all the fiber in the carafe. With the juicer, it separates the juice from the fiber. Now there's pros and cons to each. Check my other videos if you're more interested in that. So I believe the Lequip RPM blender did a great job processing this blended salad. So the question you may be asking yourself is, hey John, how does that compare to the Vitamix or the Blendtec blenders? Now the Vitamix or Blendtec blenders, first off, they're about 3 times the price of this machine here. So in my opinion, you're going to get maybe half the performance of a Vitamix for 1/3 the price. So that's definitely a good deal. But this is not going to micronize or chop up the food as fine as a Blendtec or Vitamix would. So if you're really serious about getting healthy, consuming lots of fruits and vegetables, and having your food as broken down as much as possible, then you may want to look into the Vitamix or the Blendtec. But if you don't have the money, this can make an excellent alternative to one of those machines that is definitely going to be better than a household blender. And once again, the whole base has a full 5-year warranty. This is very powerful at 1100 watts max, 48 ounce carafe, nice and light, German engineered and designed blades with a nice fluted carafe that helps to suck things in. Oh, and you get that stir stick or tamper that most other blenders actually don't come with. So this could be very beneficial to help feed things in and push things in to the blender. Hopefully you've enjoyed this episode learning more about the Lequip RPM blender. Once again, my name is John Kohler with DiscountJuicers.com. Be sure to visit DiscountJuicers.com/YouTube for special promotional offers for our YouTube visitors.